Thank you so much for being with us today, Agnes. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Christy. I'm delighted to be here. Always in to share some good advice to
Uh,
people who are in business.
we're so glad to have you here. Now, we have some really exciting topics to cover today on one of my favorite, which is your vision, your passion, your purpose, designing your life and your business on your terms, and all of those things. But before we get to that, I would love to hear more about what led you to where you are today, helping women build their dreams.
I have to rewind quite a while, something along the lines of I was 40-ish. I suddenly had that nagging feeling there must be more to life, like a lot of us can have that. It took me a while, but I ended up deciding to completely change. I was in the corporate world at a high level, so completely change direction. I became an executive coach in France, doing mainly leadership development, change management, etc., for leaders, therefore men mainly. And I did that for 8 years. That was in France and internationally. I did that for 8 years, and I had that nagging feeling again. Something was still not what it should be. I loved what I was doing, but what I didn't like was the fact that I was working mainly with men. Quite often they hadn't asked to be coached, and quite often I was being asked to keep it professional, not to look into anything personal. And well, I don't believe you can cut a person in two. And so for me, my whole approach has always been holistic, looking at all areas of your life and how they impact each other. So for me, that didn't work. I decided that I no longer wanted to work with the corporate world and that I would instead work with female entrepreneurs. What led to that decision to really do it is that actually talking about holistic approach, my own life had fallen into pieces. I chose to leave a toxic relationship despite knowing the fact that I would lose absolutely everything. And I did. I had to move in with one of my sisters for 1 year. But instead of stepping into victimhood, I decided it was an amazing opportunity to reconsider all my choices in life and business, which was quite a challenge. I was 57. It's not exactly the same than when you're 30 or so. And two major decisions came out of that. One was I no longer work with the corporate world. I focus now on women entrepreneurs only. And the second one was to move to London. My roots are Dutch, but I'm French. I've lived most of my life in France, but I've never felt home in the Netherlands. I've never felt home in the UK, in France. I decided to move to the UK with just two suitcases, no income, no savings. At 58, I started my life from scratch again. Well, it's never from scratch, of course, because you have your experience that you bring with you. And I managed to rise from my ashes. And so hence the term the reinvention mentor. Although what I help my clients do doesn't have to be the consequence of something as drastic as what I have experienced. It's about choosing as a woman to step in the driver's seat of your life and deciding what you want to do next with your life. And therefore, most of the time, it has an impact on business. I don't work with women with their career unless they want to leave it to set up a business. So usually it's professional women, but either they already have a business or they are going to set up a business. For me, what drives me is I'm absolutely passionate about the fact that I believe that all women should always have the power of choice. More often than not, we are where we are in life, not as a consequence of our choices or as a consequence of our choices, but they were not ours. And that is what I want to help women shift is to take back control of their choices, if you prefer. And then from there, it's about becoming emotionally and financially free because interestingly enough, when you talk about the freedom of choice, the shortcut that is often made is it has to come from financial freedom. Yes, but not only. If you're not emotionally free, the financial freedom will never follow. There will always be some boomerang effect one way or the other.
Mm.
So that's what drives me. That's what I help my clients do. It's all about helping women step in their power and helping women dream bigger, which leads to vision and dare more.
I love all of it. I love all of it. It's so beautifully aligned. Our mission actually at She Corporated is helping women find freedom through success as an entrepreneur. So um,
Absolutely.
exactly the same thing, right? And freedom means something different to everybody. Whatever freedom means to you is what we're trying to help with. So I love all of that. Now, let's talk about having a clear vision, because you say not having a vision is like leaving home for a long journey but not putting an address in your GPS. So can you
You
talk to
could
us about
land,
that?
you could land anywhere. So yes, well, arriving in London at 58 with two suitcases, no income, no savings is pretty scary. So at the core of what I do is everything around knowing how to handle fear. We will come back to that because you can imagine that I woke up at, it's 3 o'clock in the morning with a panic attack here and there. But I know how to handle fear and deconstruct it and then leverage it. But the other thing that kept me going is I had a clear vision. And I arrived with my vision, and that's what keeps me going. The thing with vision is that I say it's both your anchor and your compass. It helps you know where you're going to, but at the same time, it's what keeps you grounded. So when you feel like giving up, this is what helps you come back from off track to on track again, because you know where you're going. The interesting thing with that whole notion of GPS, I love analogies, is that when you are let me rewind. What we tend to think is that we need to know how it's going to happen. And I say, no, you don't have to, as long as you know what your next step is and in what direction. And that's the direction of your vision. When you are driving in a car at night, and you have entered an address in the GPS, even if there are roadblocks, whether it's night or not, by the way, the roadblocks can be there. You trust that your GPS, even if you were meant to go straight and now you go left, you trust that your GPS will bring you back on the right road. The interesting thing with the night vision is that you don't see the road, you only see the road as it unfolds. And that's exactly the same with, how am I going to make that vision work? The other thing interesting about vision, and I differ a bit here with what is usually said, a vision board, usually it's about you picture exactly the right car or the house or the whatever. And I don't believe in that. What is important to capture is the essence of what you want to achieve. And the essence means, how will it make me feel? And I have an interesting example for that. When I arrived, I had created a vision board in France, but it was a very big one. So you can imagine that it didn't fit in my two suitcases. At some point, I missed it. So I asked my sister to take a picture of it, and I had it printed on a foam board. So I had my vision again. And I wasn't doing any yoga, but I had yoga on my vision board. And at some point, once I could afford going to yoga classes, which was not the case for a while, I realized that yoga isn't for me. It's just not my thing. But I came across Qigong, and Qigong is totally my thing. And I mean, you can't be my client without me recommending you Qigong, because it is such a wonderful combination of relaxation, of breath work, of exercise, and what am I missing? And meditation. And then I realized that it doesn't. So I was initially annoyed because it was on my board, not Qigong. But then I realized that the essence of what it meant is exactly the same. So I have absolutely no problem or had, because meanwhile I've changed it because I've used the software to create a gorgeous one. I had no problem anymore with the fact that it was yoga instead of Qigong, because it meant exactly the same.
And it gives you the
Yeah.
same feeling. So how would you represent, this is completely off topic, but I'm just interested. How would you represent that on a vision board now? Because you're trying to represent the feeling more so than the actual activity.
Well, it's so that vision board that I had created originally had something like, I think, over 50 pictures on it. And once I turned my vision workshop one day into a 5-week immersive online course, I partnered up with a guy who has an amazing software to help you create a vision board. And you can rescale everything, you can move everything, you can add words on it, etc. It's absolutely gorgeous. And so I was annoyed because he had back then, if I remember well, limited to 24 pictures. And I thought that doesn't work. I have so much more I'm going to miss, and etc. And he ended up adapting it. I think he then went to 36 or something like that. And I started creating my vision board. And I have less than 24 on my vision board because I just captured the essence of what each area in fact meant. And so for Qigong, I just have the image of a woman, it's a woman doing Qigong. And that's enough. I know what it means to me. That is what is important. In the center, I have added the text that I love that I've made it mine, but it's from Brandon Burchard, who says that at the end of the life, it's of your life, it's only the answer to 3 questions that are important. Did I live? Did I love? Did I matter? So in the center of it, it just says live, love, matter. That's the essence of what I want to capture for my life. So I have examples like that. I don't have an exact house or whatever. It's more the spirit of how I want to live. So yeah, it's so what I do with my vision course, what that is interesting, that's what makes it particular, is that I have them start first, look at what is working, what is not working in their life. You need to know what your starting point is, and why want something completely different for the things that are working. But then you identify also what is missing. So they start looking at that. Then I have them look at, who do I want to be? What do I want to do? What do I want to have? And then from there, I have them write their vision in full details in all areas of their life. And if I remember well, per day, it's 2 areas. And so it's present tense in the future, of course, but present tense involving all your senses. So if you're talking about being at a retreat in Bali, you can feel the warmth of the sun on your skin. I mean, you really express. So what they are doing with that, and with that process, we're already a week in. They are, without realizing it, creating the imagery at the subconscious level. So that when they then start looking for the pictures that they're gathering for that software, they are naturally drawn to the pictures they already know without knowing that they know.
Mm-hmm.
And then we, go further into looking into what is going to stop them. Fear, of course. So then I teach them how to identify fear, deconstruct, and leverage it. And then we look at how can I stay connected to it. So that has everything to do with affirmations, daily routine, journaling, etc. And also mindset and posture. How would I walk if I were my future me? Makes it immediately different. And then we do a brainstorm and a 3-year plan, 1-year plan, one 90-day plan, and we end up to what am I working on today? So that then turns into time and priority management and how to stay intentional and focused, which leads to the 4 pillars of my work.
That's brilliant. I mean, so many people do the vision board, and first of all, they do the vision board, but they don't think about how they want to feel with each of those images,
It's all about feeling. It's all about
and then they just put it on the wall, and they don't do anything further with it, and it's not going to work if you don't. And you've got all of the angles covered there. I love that.
yeah. I have incredible results. It's funny because I spoke to someone this morning, totally unrelated, but she happens to know one person who has done my course. And she said to me, Oh, and yes, I had Adele, and in a 15-minute call, she's been talking at least 3 or 4 times about how life-changing it had been for her and how much and I mean, I follow her. It's incredible, everything that she's achieved. It is transformational if you do the work properly, of course, as usual.
So you mentioned it again, and let's talk about it before we move on to the four pillars. You talk about using fear as a fuel. So can you tell us more about that?
Fear is, whether we know it or not, fear is ruling our life, every single one of us, and it will until our last breath. So we have to accept it. But we don't have to let it paralyze us. So when I run workshops on that, when I start first by explaining the role of fear. It's normal. It's there to protect us, except that we no longer have a lion ready to jump on us at the next corner, but the reaction of our primal brain is still the same as when that was. So the role of our subconscious mind is to protect us from danger, except that it translates into danger anything that it has never experienced before. So everything new equals danger. And what it then does is does everything it can to stop us. Don't do this. And that can translate into many ways. And those many disguises can be stuff like procrastination, perfectionism, you know, that type of things. So the very first thing to do is to identify that we're operating from a place of fear. And what is interesting to know as well, and I know that that made a huge difference for me, is that your mind can only focus on one thing at a time. I'm not talking about multitasking. I really talk about focus. So when you're focusing on fear, and you don't do anything for it. You give it the room to inflate. And it inflates and it inflates and it inflates until it paralyzes you. And then it's too late, quote unquote. There are ways, but it's too far. The key here is to identify at an earlier stage when it hasn't taken up that much space that you are operating from a place of fear. And then I give two different advice. One is first to identify, and once you have done it a few times, you don't need to do it anymore because you will know, is to identify that ultimately it is going back to very, very basic needs that we human beings have. So that what that means is that, so let's imagine that I need to do a talk and I'm afraid that I won't remember what I have to say. So that is the apparent fear. I would then, so I would ask you, what are you afraid of? Oh, I'm afraid I would lose, I won't remember what I have to say. And then I will help you dig deeper. So if you are losing your words, what are you afraid of? Oh, people will think that I don't know what I'm talking about. Oh, but if people don't think you don't know what you're talking about, what you're afraid of. And we drill down until we arrive to all our unique, our basic human needs. I'm afraid that I will be rejected. I'm afraid that I won't be loved. I'm afraid that type of things. So that I do a few times, because once you start understanding that that is what is underneath, you don't have to do it each time. But then you are going to come back to the appearance fear, and you are then going to deconstruct it. And deconstructing it, it means finding counterproof. So let's assume that you did a talk in the past and it was very successful. So you will look at, okay, and last time when I did it, how did it work? Oh, it was amazing, etc. You know, that type of things. And by the way, I didn't give you my very simple definition of fear. You know the acronym. Everyone knows the acronym FEAR, a false evidence appearing real. I have a very simple definition. Fear is nothing more than the anticipation of something that might happen, but that probably won't. It's not a fact. It's a a movie that we're making in our mind, and we all do it. So you deconstruct it, and then there are different type of fears, because this is here in this case a fear that directly links to you. But if we look at money beliefs, for instance, oh, in my family I've always heard that rich people are greedy. If that is the type of fear that stops you from not becoming successful, the way to deconstruct it is to then look for counterproof by looking at, okay, find rich people who are actually doing good with their money. So the key is to deconstruct it. Once you've deconstructed it, by doing that, you have brought the focus, the attention of your mind that was focusing on the fear on something else. It has lowered that impact. And then the antidote to fear is action. So then you take focused action, because focused, again, if you're focused on that, you're not focusing on the fear. And how often have we started something that we dreaded, and then we go like, oh my God, was that all there was? Because once the ball gets rolling, we just do it and it's not a problem at all. So that's, in short, the structure to identify and deconstruct fear. And by doing that, you then leverage it as a fuel, because you are now taking an action that you were too afraid to take. And it's not you, it's normal, it's human. But you have shortened the time frame in which you were experiencing the fear, so it doesn't have the time to inflate. So it's still scary, but once you've done it, you've done it.
The fear of the unknown is
It's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of the unknown, absolutely. Yeah. And again, it's normal. So no reason to beat ourselves up, but don't stay with it.
That's amazing. Now, you've got a 4-pillar framework that you teach. And if we've got enough time, I would love to quickly run through those, because I think there's a lot of value there.
So there is a difference between my pillars and my framework.
Okay.
The pillars are underlying my work. My 4 pillars are self-awareness. You cannot change something you're not aware of. Once you are aware of something, that is when you can go to the second pillar, and that is making conscious choices. As I said, we are all where we are in life as a consequence of our choices, except that more often than not, they were not ours. So what are different choices you would start making if it were not because daddy or mommy said you should, or society is putting pressure on you? I started as an executive coach. And although I work on business and I'm very good at it, at the core of what I do is actually life coaching, because it's all about mindset, confidence, clarity, and that type of thing. So it's really that part. But I went for executive coach because everyone said I should do it, because I had 25 years of senior level experience in the corporate world. But it wasn't what I wanted to do. So even then, I was still not making my own choices. So self-awareness, conscious choices. And from there, it's intention and focus. So I set an intention every day. I have designed an empowerment planner. Well, you can see them on the shelf there, the teal books. I have designed an empowerment planner that is the companion book of my work. But every day there is in it just room for listing your appointments, because I have everything in my phone. I don't need it on paper. And I set an intention for my day. I list my gratitudes, but not mechanically. I just write down a keyword, but the moment I write down that keyword, I connect to how it makes me feel. So I'm really writing my gratitudes. My to-do is only what I'm going to work on that day, so that at the end of the day, I have the satisfaction of saying check, 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 as opposed to, oh my God, I still have so much to do because I listed far too much for the day. long
That
way ago of it.
that's still a work in progress for me, and it makes such a difference. Because I did that. I used to call it scheduling aggressively, and I would put on a good 50% more than I had time to do, but it doesn't make you feel good at the end of the day when you always.
No, and another thing that I work a lot with is energy. Not, I'm not a healer, but the notion of energy. Every single day we have 100% of energy. One day it's a lot, one day it's not, but it still is 100% of what we have. So what do we want to focus that energy on? On things that we can do something about. So don't look at the things you can change. It's useless. That's a waste of your energy. So it's really important that your energy remains as high as possible. So I always say, if you start your day with a high level of vibration, the chances that you end up on your knees if something knocks you down in the day is far less, how do you say that? Far less probable. Is that English?
Like,
Yeah, likely, that's what I meant, than if you are already on your knees because your vibration is so low. So stay intentional, set an intention for the day. And then at the end of the day, you ask yourself three questions. It's not the questions of Brendan Burchard. Is what worked well? We tend to beat ourselves up for everything we're doing wrong. Take stock of what works. So what did I do well? What was successful today? Can be small thing, maybe big thing. The next thing is what was challenging. So not what did I do wrong, what was challenging. And that thing you found challenging, that might be, oh, I said that I would work on my website and I haven't. And then the reason why that will come up is BS. I didn't have the time. That's not true. If you didn't make the time, it means it wasn't a priority. If it were a priority, you would have made the time. So it's never the true reason. So then you can ask yourself the third question, and that is, what can I improve? And that is about not beating yourself up because you didn't do something, even if the excuse was not the right one, etc. But ask yourself, how can I get on track again? What can I do? So I always say, to my clients, be a little Edison, invent a new lamp bulb every day and look at what worked and what didn't work, and then adapt and create a new lamp bulb the next day. So by doing that, you remain intentional and focused. And it's also about then learning to remove the distractions, fear of missing out, and that type of things, shiny object syndrome. All these are things that will direct us elsewhere. I always say again, it's interesting. I'm realizing that it's again the answer, the three ways to answer a question. And coming back to the vision, is this going to help me achieve my vision? And there are only three possible answers. One is yes, go for it. Second is not now, park it, but out of sight so that you are not tempted. And the third one is no, bin it. Simple, very simple. And if you do that, it's not always easy, of course. Sounds easy the way I describe it, but you know, I mean, even when you're good at these things, I'm really good at these things. Don't get me wrong, I'm a normal human being. I go off track regularly, but I know how to bring myself back on track because I am intentional and focused.
and just even stepping back and analyzing it puts you miles ahead of where you were before. Just taking that step back. And at the end of the day, I love those questions because you're taking the emotion out of it. You're looking at it like a scientist, right? You're looking at it analytically and saying what worked, what didn't work, not what did I do wrong, or why
It's not
shouldn't I do this?
that. No, it's not
Sure.
about, there's no such a thing as failure. There's only opportunities for growth, for learning. So what's interesting is that it's funny that you express it this way about the scientist, etc. Is what is particular with the way I work with my clients is that I bring the best of two worlds. So the Dutch in me is organized, systems, tools, being pragmatic, etc. But I'm a very firm believer in the law of attraction in neurosciences and quantum physics, etc. So I have tools to know how to make decisions, etc. but I use them only to validate my gut feeling because I follow my intuition completely in everything I'm doing. And I don't believe that we can be only down to earth, completely grounded, and not have any form of dream or whatever. But I don't believe that you can only be in the woo woo world and, there in the air and not be grounded. I think you need both. And that is what I do in my own life. That is what I bring to my clients. I bring the best of two worlds together. You need both.
You do. And we tend, as humans, I think we tend to try and compartmentalize things. We want things to be neat and tidy, and that's not how it works. You get a little bit of everything in there.
No, I mean, the framework that I use, the 4C, is clarify, clear, create, consolidate. So clarify is taking stock of where you are, what is important to you, and where do you want to be. So that is a step that is bringing you from confusion to clarity. Then the clearing part is removing everything that stands in the way. So that's going from limitation to possibilities. And that is everything around your mindset, how you relate to money and success, communication and relationships, that type of things. Then it's creating the business that is aligned with who you are. So the notion of personal branding. And the consolidate part is how do you make sure that all of that is sustainable? So that is where we look at self-care, work-life balance, but also personal effectiveness, tools. How can I delegate systems, automation, and etc. So you see, it is a mix. So one of the reasons why it has taken me so long to put this program together is that every day I was waking up with this needs to be for that. The Dutch in me structured, so there had to be a logic. And it doesn't work like that because everything is interlinked. And I have clients where I start with the money. I have clients where I start with the business. I have other clients where I start with a relationship. We end up going through all the points, but not necessarily in that order, because depending on where we're at in life, it's not necessarily in the same order. So it's bringing in that flexibility, but all the steps are important.
Yeah. It's not always neat and tidy.
No.
And so before we let you go, Agnes, I just wanted to ask you, because you have a wealth of experience in helping women entrepreneurs, and we have a lot of newer women entrepreneurs that listen to the podcast. What advice would you give to somebody starting their business or in the first few years of their business?
Well, I would say there's a lot I would say, but the very first thing is don't let anyone tell you your dream is impossible. So remove from your environment as far as possible, of course, all the naysayers. The naysayers are in essence two type of people, either the people who care for you sincerely and they're afraid for you, or they're jealous. They are envious because you're doing what they would love to do and they don't. So remove them and surround yourself with like-minded people, people who are, that's why this notion of community is so important. That is why, being in masterminds or groups, etc., that of people who are working on the same type of things is so, so important. The other thing I would say is learn to accept what is. Don't waste your energy on fighting things that you cannot change. That's wasted energy that you don't have anymore to focus on what you can change. Then I'm tempted to say that skills, you can learn skills. It's far more difficult to shift your mindset without, you can have the best techniques in the world. If your mindset is not the right one, it won't work. And then of course, have a clear vision, know where you want to go. And it's very interesting if you follow a process like I described it, because I've described it in sufficient detail for you to be able to do it on your own. You don't have to follow my course. You can, of course, but you don't have to. It is, even if you don't know, you will know. Because I'm not asking you just in 1 hour to come up with your vision. It's an immersive process. So don't try to do it all in one go. Pick it up every single day. You want to be immersed in it every day. And you know how the mind doesn't like unanswered questions? If you start thinking about that, the mind will start looking for answers. But so if you do that over the span of a longer period, you will find answers. You will find answers. And that's life changing.
Well, I really appreciate you being with us today for starters and giving us some inspiration on, starting to build a life that's more clearly focused on what we really want. It's amazing. Now you have a couple of programs that you run. You want to tell us about those before we sign off?
So I would say, in particular, if your audience is one at the more beginning of their journey, I would say my Successful Women Academy platform. So it is a web app portal. So fingertips, it's on your phone. It's on available on your computer as well, but it's on the phone. It's an app. And what is interesting there, so what is particular with women entrepreneur in particular, is that it's so much more difficult for them to be successful than for men because they have a little more in their life to do than a man in general. And so what they are struggling with is not only how do I this or that in my business, but how do I run my life? How do I manage to do both? And how do I grow in parallel? So personal development. And my own frustration, again, as a person who is structured, practical, etc., that aspect of my personality, I personally always had the frustration. Oh, if I want to clarity, I need to go to clarity coach. If I want confidence, I need to go to confidence coach. I need business, I need to go to business coach. And I always thought, why can't I find it all in one place? And that is what I have created. And I'm a woman of collaboration. So what I have done is I have asked over 70 experts in their field, in business, in life, in personal development, to deliver content that is foundational at the foundational level of all these topics. So it's not a course. It's you come and shop what you need when you need it. So do you want to set up a podcast? Are you struggling with parenting? There is an amazing course on basics for parenting. There is another course on sign language for babies before they express before they talk. There's another one on mindfulness for parents so that they teach mindfulness to their parents. But there is another course on dating because we are women, we're complete, we have a whole life. And so all these things are conditioning us. Depending on your audience, it may be less true depending on their age level. There is a module on perimenopause, menopause, because that can stand in the way as well, etc., etc. So it's a membership site. You pay per month. You can leave whenever you want. There is a 7-day trial. It's called Successful Women Academy, and it is a platform that continues to grow because we continue to add constantly content there as I come across experts in their field. So that is that. Then you have my vision course. That's a 5-week immersive course, as I said, that can be found on my website, the reinventionmentor.biz.
We're going to put both of those links in the show notes as well. So you can click down the show notes. If you're listening on a platform where you can't see the show notes, which you can't on some of them, you can also go to our podcast website, which is onestepempire.com. Just the name of the podcast, onestepempire.com. And all the links are going to be there. All the show notes, all the other episodes, everything you need is going to be there. So thank you so much for being with us today, Anya. It was so many takeaways from today. I can't even summarize it. I really appreciate you being here.
It's a pleasure. I never can stop sharing. It's so important. Women, step into your power. You can do it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.